Hello, Sunshine. I'm ALEXI LALAS, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking, well, our new studio for damn sure. World Cup qualifying as we kick off the octagonal. A crazy week of MLS, Bob Ross, the end of a transfer window, a team in Brazil / Argentina to root for, more on what the best leagues are, Heathers, water skiing, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Tuesday, August 31st in the year 2021?
I am doing well. We are coming to you from the 5th floor at the Fox lot, which of course you and I both knew is where we'd be taping this podcast today.
So we are. It was wonderful. Luis put this together. All right. So the last time that we actually recorded together in a official capacity Fox studio setting with our digital studios was way back, if you can believe it, March 9th, 2020. And then, as we all know, the world went to hell in a handbasket, and we all kind of pivoted and rotated and adjusted as best we could. So Zoom be gone. We are back. And we both made this mistake coming into what we thought was work this morning, in that we went to our other facility where we originally had recorded our pod. And we come to find out that we're actually, as you mentioned, on the 5th floor of our normal Fox lot in Los Angeles, and that's where we are actually recording. Now, the bad news is we both went to the wrong place. We were sent to the wrong place, and maybe you want to lay some blame, but hold on a second. The good news is, if you're going to go to the wrong place, when you then get to the right place, at least have it be something special. And I think we can look around and say this is definitely an upgrade from anything that we have ever had, and certainly had in the past. So our new digs here are pretty friggin' awesome, if I do say so my damn self, and I do.
I agree. Now, if you'll indulge me, I did have a Curb Your Enthusiasm-like incident at the wrong place.
Okay, go ahead.
So I park my car, I take the ticket, I walk into the lobby, I tell the guy, hey, I'm going up to the 3rd floor to tape a Fox Sports podcast. He gives me this puzzled look. He says, Fox has been out of here for months, so you're in the wrong place. I called Luis, I confirmed that was true. And so I immediately turned around, walked back to the parking structure, got in my car, was driving away. I get to the gate, I put the ticket in. The gate doesn't open. So I buzzed the guy, the very guy I had just spoken to. Yeah. I said, hey, the ticket isn't working. Can you let me out? He said, no, you have to go out the visitor's exit. It's a different exit on the other side of the parking structure. I said, okay, I should have done that, but now I'm here. Can you just open up this gate for me? And he said, no. You got to go out the visitor's exit. So I said, okay. So I turned around the car. I went to the visitor's exit. I get there. I buzzed the guy. I said, okay, I'm here. Open the gate. He's like, no, put in the ticket. I said, well, I put the ticket in at the other place. I didn't get it back. He said, well, then technically that's a lost ticket. So you have to drive to this other place in the parking lot, type in that you lost your ticket and pay a fee like $20. I said, I'm not doing that. I've been here 5 minutes. You know the story. Just let me out. And this turned into, no joke, like a 10-minute argument with the guy until he finally said, fine, I'll open up the gate for you. And he opened it up.
Oh, so he could open it up all along. No problem.
Absolutely.
He was just standing on principle. Oh, well, I'm glad you got out of that. That kind of makes me happy, and it's really kind of funny.
I will say, when I was driving here, all I was thinking was, oh my God, Alexi's going to have a field day with this, me going to the wrong place. And I was very happy to find out that you made the same mistake.
I did. I pivoted right in the middle of my journey because it just occurred to me that this is not quite right. So anyway, all right, we're both here, and we're both very, very happy. What have you spent your last week doing? I know there's all sorts of soccer stuff that we're going to get to. I know we talk about different things that we've watched. I got a couple of things that I watched. Anything on your radar?
I am off and running on Downton Abbey.
Oh my, finally. Okay, so how often running are you?
I am early in season 2.
Okay, but you've watched multiple episodes now.
Oh, yeah.
So you got an understanding and a flavor for what it is. Has there been a moment where you've said, oh my goodness, this is not something that I want to get hooked on, or are you already into it?
No, I'm into it.
Okay.
I love it.
Right.
So far, so good.
All right.
The Crawley family. Yeah?
All right, wonderful. Well, I will look forward to seeing, as the ebbs and flows of that series happen, how you react to that. I binged it from start to finish, went well ahead of you. I give it a solid. In totality, I give it a solid B. All right, and which is good for it. And there were A moments and there were F moments, but in when I completed the whole thing. All right, these are a couple of things that I watched. Number one, the Bob Ross documentary, which is on Netflix, called Happy Accidents and Betrayal and Greed. Bob Ross, the painter that many people knew, with an incredibly soothing and sensitive type of demeanor and voice, and on PBS had an incredibly successful show that ran, 25, 30 years, whatever it was. But there's a story behind who Bob Ross is as a person, as a painter, and even some intrigue when it comes to his life off camera and away from the actual art world. So I recommend that highly. That's on Netflix. Monster in the Shadows, a true crime doc that's about 3 episodes, I think, on Peacock, about a murder of a 19-year-old girl in Mobile, Alabama, and the cover-up and all the intrigue that goes on with that. Definite thumbs up. From a retro perspective, I went back and watched a movie called Heathers. You ever seen this movie called Heathers? It was a kind of an 80s classic, dark type of comedy, starring Winona Ryder and Christian Slater, among others. It still holds up. As a matter of fact, it holds up. You probably wouldn't be able to make it today, given the constraints and the restraints of our society. But it still holds up. It is still interesting. As I said, it's incredibly dark in the best possible way. So I do recommend that. And sometimes I go back and watch these movies and they just don't hold up. All right, enough of that. You ready to light the candle?
Let's do it.
All right. As you know, well, you might not know if you're new to the podcast, but way back in March of 2020, as you know, each and every week we would kick the pod off with my State of the Union. So we're going to get back into that, and I think it's a week to do that, given the U.S. men's national team back in action in terms of qualifying. Yes, it's time for my State of the Union, where I look at a part of the game from an American perspective. And this week, it goes a little something like this. 1,421 days ago, I walked out of a bar in a daze, more so than usual, after witnessing the U.S. men's national team lose to Trinidad and Tobago, and in doing so, flush their 2018 World Cup qualifying dream down the toilet. Like many, I was sad, I was frustrated, and I was angry. Make no mistake, it was the greatest failure in U.S. soccer history, and our lowest point. But a funny thing happened on the visit to the rock bottom. In our failure, we were forced to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and find a way to come back stronger. And we did. Now, 4 years later, with the U.S. on the eve of yet another World Cup qualifying campaign, we find ourselves looking at this team with an unprecedented level of confidence, optimism, and pride relative to the undeniable talent and the depth and the potential of this team. But CONCACAF is a siren, and it will dash you on the rocks if you are not prepared. This we know. CONCACAF doesn't care about your name or where you play. It doesn't care about how much money you make. It doesn't care about how famous you are or who you're dating. It doesn't care about how many social media followers you have. And it certainly doesn't care about how many trophies you won over the summer. So now, the only thing that matters for Coach Greg Berhalter and this U.S. team is to get the job done. And in doing so, justify our beliefs in this team. Nobody cares how it gets done, only that it gets done. I have faith, but not blind faith. Now it gets real. Now it gets interesting. Now it matters more than ever. It should come as no surprise that my State of the Union, and my first State of the Union since March, is about this team that occupies so much of a space in our soccer landscape, and we talk so much about. And we are at this moment here where it is 4 years on from that that crazy time in 2017, where everything kind of is informed by that failure. So we find ourselves this week where this team is kicking off in. Are we calling it the octagonal? Because I think that's what it's kind of come to be. I know there was talk about the oct and the talk about the octagon. And it involves 8 teams. For the first time, it involves 8 teams as opposed to 6 teams in this final round of qualifying out of CONCACAF. I think we've come to the realization that most people are going to call it the octagonal. We will be broadcasting this weekend in the second game of this 3 games that are happening this week. I think we are going to call it the octagonal. Is it octagonal from your perspective?
Seems to have caught on, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll call it the octagonal. I know a lot of people wanted the ocho and all that kind of stuff. So that people understand, if you don't already, as we mentioned, there are 8 teams. They have gone through a preliminary qualifying process to get to this 8 teams. The 8-team octagonal comes out of the COVID era and a reassembly and an attempt to make this as streamlined as it can be, also as fair as it can be. It adds a couple more teams, and there are obviously some more games. Home and away. We start this week. We are recording this on Tuesday, August 31st. In a couple of days, on Thursday, the U.S. will kick off this round of what amounts to 14 games, home and away, in El Salvador. Against El Salvador, they then return. And on Sunday, the game that we are broadcasting here on Fox, they will take on Canada. And then the following Wednesday, they will go to Honduras. So 2 away games, 1 home game. I will start it off with this before I throw it to you, Mosse. As I mentioned in the State of the Union pod, I remain cautiously optimistic, but absolutely optimistic. And I think that there is a general recognition that there is optimism from a lot of people given this team. 3 games, 2 away, 1 home. Conventional wisdom says you win your home games, and certainly from a U.S. team, that would be expected and has always been expected in the qualifying process. So I'm expecting the win at home against Canada, albeit a very good Canada. We'll talk more about that. And then you get what you can on the road, and certainly if there's opportunities out there against lower and inferior opposition, you find a way at some point to get a win on the road. I think right off the bat against this El Salvador team, which I think is a good team, and certainly one of the better El Salvador teams that we've seen in a long while, I'm thinking that is a 3 points right off the bat because, yes, we'll talk about more about what CONCACAF is, but I think right off the bat, both El Salvador is in rarefied air, and a lot of these players from the U.S. that haven't played in a World Cup qualifying process are also new to that. So I think you get 3 points there. I think you get 3 points against Canada, and I'll take my chances against Honduras, which I actually think is probably the 3rd or the 4th best team in this octagonal, and they have already given us problems. I'll take a point down there. So I'm thinking 7 points of these 3 games. Am I crazy? Am I being greedy?
No, I am more than cautiously optimistic. I'm not going to doubt this young collection of players until they give me reason to doubt them, because to me, they've lived up to the billing so far. I know there's been a lot of talk about the inexperience in this roster, how few players have actually gone through CONCACAF qualifying, but that cuts both ways. It also means that most of these players weren't around for that qualification failure, so they don't have that sort of baggage. We're sort of projecting that onto guys like McKinney and Adams, and Ricardo Pepi wasn't even born yet when they lost to Trinidad. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. So I actually think that they'll be unfazed by that, and they'll play very confidently in the way they have played, the way they played in the Nations League final, and for those that were involved in the Gold Cup, the way they played there. So I think the talent is there, and I'm a big Berhalter fan, so I think it's going to be a very positive qualification campaign.
Last week on air, Stuart Holden put his 11, what he thinks is the 11. And, I pointed out that of his 11, I think there were 8 of the 11 had never been involved in qualifying. And to your point, yes, there is something that the innocence and the naivete of youth can be an advantage. But as I mentioned in the State of the Union, you're not in Kansas anymore. And I think very, very quickly they will realize that. I think it benefits them to play against a team like El Salvador right off the bat. Yes, it's going to be a difficult environment. And when we say difficult, it's a number of things. It's first off, you're just on the road, okay? And that in and of itself is a different situation, right? Then oftentimes the fields that you're playing on, the grass that is used oftentimes is different. It's slower, it's thicker, it's more difficult. Oftentimes it's not wet, that kind of stuff. And you think, oh, that doesn't matter. Yeah, it actually does. It does make a difference. Then you add the actual environments, and often the Thunderdome-esque type of experiences that some of these cauldrons are. It has changed a little bit, and I think it is easier than it has been in the past, but it's not easy. Then you add playing at high noon at times, very, very hot, playing in altitude, playing in smog. And then you're playing against some very, very good teams, and you're playing against teams that this may be the only time that they, as players and as they represent a country, the only time that they have the opportunity to get one over on the United States. okay? And if nothing else, they can at least say, you know what, we're better than the U.S. and we can beat the United States. And once again, we go with the baggage of what our country is to the rest of the world. And so while it is a soccer game, it is also a representation of what I feel is the greatest country in the world and all of the baggage that comes with that. And so there is often extra motivation that comes into play. All right, so that's the setup of what we are about to enter into. And as I mentioned in the State of the Union, it was the lowest point and the biggest failure in U.S. soccer history. And now, as you said, I can't think of a time when we've been more excited and optimistic, and rightfully so, about what this team it is. But now, this is when they start to prove it to us. All right, so let's go over a couple of these games before we get to some of the players. I mentioned what I felt was what needed to happen. Anything different in terms of these three games? Do you think they get 3 points down in El Salvador on Thursday?
I do. I think they very possibly could come out of this with 9 points, win all three. But if one of the road games ended in a draw, that wouldn't be an end of the world. 7 of 9 points would be fine. So yeah, I buy everything you said there.
All right. So, but that second game is arguably against the best of the three against Canada. I mean, we saw Canada. This is not your dad's Canada, okay? This is a legit Canadian team that also is feeling incredibly confident, that we saw do very, very well in the Gold Cup and at times play a completely different way, and also a team that is going to add Jonathan Davis and Alphonso Davies. So, I mean, they are only going to get better.
I'm very excited for that game. You know, we watched Canada at the Gold Cup, and they played well and had guys like Tejan Buchanan and Stephen Eustachio look very good. And we kept thinking, boy, imagine what this team will look like when we plug in some of these other players you mentioned. And now we're going to get to see it. So the U.S. could be facing a Canada team that's throwing Alphonso Davies, Tejan Buchanan, and Jonathan David at them. So that would be a tough day for that U.S. back line. They'd be busy. And it is going to be interesting to see how Greg Berhalter manages the 3 games in 6 days and how he rotates. I know there's been some suggestions that there's no way John Brooks could play 90 minutes, 3 different games in 6 days. So, you know, that middle game is in Nashville. Maybe that would be a game to play Walker Zimmerman alongside Miles Robinson. They formed a nice pairing early at the Gold Cup before Zimmerman got hurt. You know, you wouldn't think those fullbacks can fly up and down the wings 3 times in the span of 6 days. So maybe Sergiño Dest starts 2 of the games and DeAndre Yedlin starts the other. On the left there, you've got Anthony Robinson and George Bello. We'll see how he rotates them. And I don't think Tyler Adams, with all the injury problems he's had, is a guy you want to play, start him 3 games in 6 days. Fortunately, Kellen Acosta looked very good at the Gold Cup, so you now feel like the U.S. has a very solid backup there that could slip in and start one of those games. So, but it's going to be interesting to see how he rotates. Does he go all out in 2 of the games and then heavily rotates for another, or are the rotations sort of sprinkled in throughout? So I'm curious to see that.
The best part about having all this talent is that we actually have legitimate debates and arguments about what that 11 is going to be. And to your point, I think that there is going to be some strategic type of personnel and formations and tactical decisions relative to the team that you're playing, where you're playing, and obviously the rotation that's inevitably going to happen when you have 3 games in such a short period of time. Getting back to your point about this group, I do think that they recognize the opportunity. I do think that there is a general sentiment about among these players, and especially the ones that haven't been a part of this team before, to kind of set things right. And you know, the depth that Greg Berhalter has at his disposal is, I think, going to be on display. Do you start Matt Turner?
I do, yeah. I'm in the camp that thinks he's better than Stefan, and he should be the number 1. Absolutely.
So you think he's better than Stefan regardless of where he's playing? So Zach Stefan had facilitated a loan away, and he was playing in a mid-level or a low-level type of EPL team right now, but starting consistently. How much does that influence your decision on that?
That's part of it, but I do think Turner is just flat out better. You know, we covered the Bundesliga, and Stefan played at Dusseldorf on loan that season, and getting to watch him closely there, and then watching, obviously, Matt Turner covering Major League Soccer as we do, I just think Turner is flat out the superior goalkeeper.
It's really going to be interesting because there's a situation, I was talking to Stu Holden the other day. I wanted to make sure I pinned him down because I'm good with starting Matt Turner. But if you do that, I don't want you rotating. I hate rotating goalkeepers. And look, goalkeepers can play as many games as possible. They're not running around or doing anything like that. And I do think that there is a benefit to getting into if it's positive, getting into a groove with the players that are around you. So does this count as, if this happens, if Matt Turner is the starting goalkeeper, does this count as being Wally pipped?
Oh, interesting.
I mean, he's not really hurt. I mean, he has had injuries, right? I mean, who knows? Had he finished the Gold Cup or whatever, would you be looking at him differently?
In the sense that he was the starter, he didn't play at the Gold Cup, and Matt Turner did what he did. And if Turner comes out of this summer as a starter, yeah, there's an element of a Wally Pipness there.
Okay,
absolutely.
Good. See how I used that? I mean, you taught me that, and now I can't stop using it. I'm going to, pigeonhole it into anything.
On Ricardo Pepi, it is interesting. He seems to have inherited that Daryl Dike center forward savior.
Next man up, right?
Dike, I know, has had some fitness issues, which is why he's probably not in the squad, but also his stock has dropped a little bit, and Pepi's is soaring. We saw him this past weekend in MLS put on a show against Austin FC, a crazy game we covered, 5-3 Dallas win. And he seems to be really the man of the moment right now. He's chosen to play for the U.S. over Mexico, and so a lot of hopes on him all of a sudden.
And there's legit people out there that think he should start right away. And the reason why, because I don't think that that's crazy talk, but the reason why is because this position, and so let's transition to this number 9 striker position, which we know has been vacant. The reason why we got all crazy about Daryl Dike is the same reason we're getting crazy about Ricardo Pepi. Is like, who is going to step up? And the reason why also is because Josh Sargent or anybody else that was given opportunities and will continue to be given opportunities really hasn't made it their own. It is a glaring vacancy in the midst of all of this wonderful talk and all of this depth and players. My kingdom for a number 9. We do not have somebody there that is actually. So who do you think Greg Berhalter starts up there?
I think Sargent is probably number 1 on the pecking order going into these games. Again, it'd be interesting to see how Berhalter rotates, and if he starts Sargent in a game and Pepi comes on and does great, then maybe Pepi usurps him over the course of the 3 games. But I think going in, Sargent is number 1 in the pecking order.
I think that Ricardo Pepi is the real deal in that I think that he's a legit goal scorer that can be useful. But I will remind people that, you mentioned Daryl Dike, or even at the beginning of the year when Jesus Ferreira was the next thing. He came in and he was playing a false 9. Oh, maybe we're going to do that. So there is this flavor of the week, flavor of the month that very, very quickly can change. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen to Ricardo Pepi. I think he's a different skill set. He has the size. I think he's still growing. But it also, once again, another feather in the cap of that development system down there at FC Dallas, which just continues to crank out talent. Now, they don't necessarily continue to keep that talent, but they sell it on, and then they turn around and say, look how good we are at developing, which they are.
And actually, one of the FC Dallas Academy products that we did a feature on this past weekend that you narrated, Chris Richards, a lot of people thought he was one of the glaring omissions from this list. They were surprised that somebody like Mark McKenzie got the call over Chris Richards. So, there are Dallas Academy players on this list. Callan Acosta's another one, Weston McKennie, but there are also a couple that are missing that people would have liked to have seen on the list. So, yeah, absolutely. They're pumping out players over there.
Greg Berhalter did a bunch of media this week, and I was really heartened to see him. Once again, I think that Greg Berhalter, I got a lot of respect for him as a person and as a coach. I think that he has used the media well. I think that he has been incredibly articulate and clear about what he wants to do. Having said that, I do think that Greg Berhalter has changed a tremendous amount, actually, in his pretty relatively short tenure as this coach. I think that he has come to the realization that what he wants to do might not be what he can do, especially with the time and what is at his disposal, despite the incredible depth of talent that he has. I think that he has become more pragmatic. We saw that this summer with the way that this team got their trophies. My question to you and to a lot of people out there is, does it matter to you how this team plays through this qualifying process? Or is it just about just win, succeed, and get to the World Cup?
I know Steven Mandis is
right.
Waiting with bated breath to see what I say here. I would like to see the U.S. play in a way where it makes me feel like they're evolving, and Greg Berhalter is taking the team in the direction that he wants to take them in. So, yeah, I do think the how matters to some degree.
Yeah, I don't think it matters at all. It doesn't matter to me, and I don't think at the core. And look, what you're saying is something that's very romantic, and I love that, and I respect that about you and others. But I think when you really get down to it, especially for an American soccer public that was stung by not getting to the last Men's World Cup, I think that, and I think Greg Berhalter, as I said, he said it would be a failure if we did not qualify for the World Cup. Everything we've done until now is only a foundation. And that's good for him to say, because he realizes that all the good that he has done, and he has done a lot of good, all of that goes out the door, all right, in terms of the assessment of him and of this team if they don't get to the World Cup, and by the way, do well at a World Cup. That's just the reality of the situation. That's just the reality of the American soccer public and what they expect from this team. If they can do it and play beautiful, progressive, evolved type of soccer, that's great. But I'm at the point where I think that I have a respect for Greg Berhalter, the person that he was and what he wanted to do, but also that he didn't betray himself or his ethos. I think that he recognized the situation and also recognized what people like myself and I think many others ultimately want. And that is your Stephen Mandis type of situation where there is for lack of a better word, an Americanness in the way that this team goes about getting its results, and not to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, the interesting thing about these qualification campaigns is I think you have to be able to do both. There are games away from home where you need to be able to grind out a result, but also you also going to be playing home games against bunker down teams where you want to see that expansiveness, that ability to break down a bunker down defense. And so, ultimately you sort of want to be able to win both ways.
Sure. But ultimately, it really matters if you're able to do it against teams that are at your level or better than you. And we saw this team at a certain point become very, very pragmatic very, very quickly this summer. Both teams, by the way, in the Nations League and the team in the Gold Cup. Well, we'll see what team shows up. Like I said before, I don't care what team shows up as long as that team with the red, white, and blue wins. Anything else you want to talk about this?
Well, Greg Berhalter called up 26 players for these qualifiers. I know Timothy Wade dropped out with an injury, but in theory, the 26 players he called were going to be available for these games, which must be nice. Brazil haven't had the same luxury. I don't know if you're following this story, but the Premier League decided not to release players. So Brazil goes into this crunch week here with 3 qualifiers in 7 days, including a home game against Argentina, which is revenge game for the Copa America final. And we lost 9 players from the original list we called and had to scramble and call a bunch of last-second replacements. So I am not thrilled with this situation, the way FIFA and CONMEBOL have handled it. I know nobody's going to feel sorry for Brazil because I think Brazil has this incredible wealth of talent, and we get all the calls and we win the most trophies anyway. But still, you can take a step back. Putting aside the fact that it's Brazil, just the idea of a nation playing important World Cup qualifiers during an international break and not being able to have the players they called up be on the field because clubs just decided that they didn't want to release them. You must admit that situation is irksome.
Why should I care again, Mosse?
And by the way, I said that Chichi had to scramble and call a bunch of new players. He called this young midfielder for Sporting Lisbon, Mateus Nunes, who I was actually excited by that call. He's a kid that moved to Portugal when he was young and has risen to prominence there. And so there was some question about whether he was going to play for Brazil or Portugal. And so when Chichi called him up, I said, well, if any good comes out of this mess, in a week in which Jorginho won UEFA's Player of the Season award, which led to a lot of hand-wringing in Brazil about why aren't we holding on to these dual nationals, I said, okay, at least Chichi did the right thing and we're going to be able to hold on to this guy. He turned down the call because he wants to play for Portugal. So,
my friend, I am no one that I have ever known that I will probably know is better at turning a segment about the U.S. men's national team into a segment about the Brazilian national team. All right, listen. You mentioned the roster. I just want to finish it up here. Almost everybody that you would want is on this roster, which is a good thing. All right. Jossie Zardes is hurt, so I certainly think that he would have been somebody that would have been part of this group. But all guns blazing for Greg Berhalter, which is going to be why it's so fascinating to see who he ultimately is going to feel is appropriate for each one of these games. As we mentioned, on Thursday against El Salvador. On Sunday, we will be in Nashville, September 5th at 5 p.m. Pacific time on FS1. I cannot wait to see that game for a number of different reasons, including the opposition because you mentioned how good Canada is. And then next week, and we'll talk more about it because we'll do another show on Wednesday against Honduras. And those will be the first 3 games. Mosse's saying 9 points.
Yeah, no, I'm bullishly high on this team. And I mentioned Brazil. There are World Cup qualifiers going on all around the world. One European game I have my eye on is Norway against the Netherlands. I find that to be the most interesting in the European groups, and I really want to get Erling Haaland to a World Cup, so I'm going to have my eye on that game. But so, yeah, it's going to be international football back. It's going to be exciting the next few days, and obviously the U.S. Busy week ahead here.
I cannot wait. All right, we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a spin around the rest of the world and all the goings on, especially those transfer rumors and transfers that have actually happened. All right, we're back, and it's time for our European roundup. And look, we are in transfer season, and there's all sorts of craziness that happened in this transfer window. Let's start over there at the Premier League. I don't think we buried the league, but Cristiano Ronaldo to Manchester United. This is big. This is big, and you can, quantify it any way that you want in terms of the stock price or the amount of social media views or anything else. But Cristiano Ronaldo coming back to the team where he pretty much established himself as one of the greats. How surprising is this, Mosse, that he is doing this? And I guess how surprising is it that he is doing it now?
This was a remarkable couple days here because you heard some talk all summer that he might be unsettled at Juventus, but he waited until the very end of the transfer window here to really make it clear he wanted to leave. And for a couple of days there, the ball was in Manchester City's court, and it looked like it was going to be City or nothing. And they hesitated a bit. There was some debate about whether they were going to have to throw in a player, and who would it be? Would it be Gabriel Jesus or Raheem Sterling? And then next thing you know, United swooped in and got this deal done very quickly. And it's been interesting to see both Manchester City and Manchester United very concerned with the narrative here. And there are different versions floating around of what exactly happened here. The United version of it is that when they got involved, City were still in it, and he chose United. There's been talk about the fact that Sir Alex Ferguson picked up the phone and called him, Rio Ferdinand and others, and really tugged at his heart and convinced him that Manchester United is his home, and if he's going to go back to Manchester, it has to be there. While City would have you believe his top choice was Manchester City. They pulled out, and then United came in and got him because they don't want it to look like they got rejected here. So the whole situation has been fascinating to me. Now, whether you think City pulled out, they definitely hesitated. There was a window there where the ball was in their court, and had they aggressively jumped on this, they could have had Cristiano Ronaldo. So then to watch him go to Manchester United, boy, that's something that, if he does great there and leads United to great things, people are going to question Manchester City a little bit. Taking a step back from all this, I find the transfer fee shockingly low. I know he's 36 years old and he had only 1 year left in his contract, but to be able to sign Cristiano Ronaldo for, it ended up being 15 million euros is mind-boggling to me. So, especially when you see some of the other money thrown around for some of these other players. So, I think it's a good move for United. He can still play. The numbers at Juventus were phenomenal. I know there were some legitimate questions about Manchester City, whether he could fit into the way they play under Pep. I don't have those same issues at United, mainly because I don't think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has any real sort of identifiable philosophy. I think they're just sort of adding players and hoping to out-talent opponents, and so he certainly fits into that philosophy. So I think this is going to end up being a very good move for Manchester United. I
mean, look, the rich just get richer, right? And in terms of this league, which is already the most popular league in the world, and we just gave all of us yet another reason to tune in, and we will tune in, and the world will tune in. That's what Cristiano Ronaldo does to anywhere that he goes. Make no mistake, and you're absolutely right. It's the reaction from Man City is precisely because of ultimately where he picked. Now, the question I have for you, and the question that I have in general is, yes, the business side of it in terms of what you're paying and the quality of player that you are getting. He has an understanding of exactly what the club is. I love the fact that there are, I guess it would be an alumni network that are out there actively recruiting and, planting the seed and making sure that that he understands how great it would be. That's great. That is great use of the power and leverage that someone like Alex Ferguson has, or Rio, or anybody else out there. Every club should be harnessing that to their advantage. But the question is, does this put them over the hump? All right, this Manchester United team, to your point, I don't think they know how this is happening, but it has started to happen, and they've gone to the depths, and they have pulled themselves out where they are fighting now to get back to that elite fighting for number one spot. Does something like that do it enough so where they are going to be able to challenge? Because they got a lot of talent, but putting all that talent together, which is Ole's job, and there's questions as to whether he is the person to do that. I bet you there's a lot of coaches out there that look and say, geez, as much as it has improved, it still should be better. Does this put them over?
I think this puts him in the title conversation for sure.
Ooh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I will say, though, I do have some questions about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It seems like you have a Ferrari here and you've given it to a guy that's not really equipped to drive it. I kind of had the same feeling about Frank Lampard with Chelsea at the start of last season. I picked Chelsea to finish outside the top four precisely because I thought Lampard would be in over his head, and I was right about that, but they figured that out too, made the change, brought in Tuchel, took off, ended up winning the Champions League. Hey, maybe the move that's out there, Zinedine Zidane is sitting out there. If they get off to a slow start with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I don't want to already fire the guy.
If he's over his head, then he was always over his head. So why is he over his head now? Is it because of Ronaldo?
I feel like when Mourinho left, the atmosphere was so toxic that Ole was actually the right guy to step in there and calm everything down. And for the next couple of years, he did a pretty good job just getting them heading back in the right direction. But now with the signings they've made, this has grown a little bit bigger than him. So I do feel like they might need to bring in a top manager. But no, it's funny too from the Glazers' perspective. We all know as guys, sometimes when you're in a doghouse with your wife or girlfriend, you show up with a diamond necklace and suddenly everything's okay. And it does feel like Cristiano Ronaldo is that diamond necklace here. I'm not hearing a lot of discontent about the Glazers all of a sudden.
Oh yeah, how you like me now, huh? How you like those American owners now, huh?
I mean, Ronaldo, Sancho, and Varane, that's 3 diamond necklaces they just laid on the table. Now, Stan Kroenke tried to do the same thing with Arsenal fans, but their diamond necklace was Ben White, Aaron Ramsdale, and Martin Odegaard. So I suspect they're not out of the doghouse yet, the Kroenkes. I don't think
cubic zirconia or whatever it is. Boy, that's not going to fly. All right. The Harry Kane saga continues on too. Well, it doesn't continue on. It looks like that's not happening.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier with Manchester City, it's fascinating the way they played this. I mean, in a summer in which Messi, and we'll get to him in a second, and Cristiano Ronaldo switched teams, they didn't sign either one of them. They really fixated on Harry Kane, and you got the sense that it was sort of that or nothing in terms of that, filling that center forward position. And Kane, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I don't think he had the stomach to really go to war with Tottenham to try to push through a transfer. So once Daniel Levy wasn't going to honor that so-called gentleman's agreement, he said, well, I guess I'm staying. And so he pulled the plug on that. And Manchester City, who, bear in mind, we're operating from a position of strength this summer. They're coming off a season in which they won the Premier League going away and got to a Champions League final. And they added Jack Grealish for over £100 million. So that's not like they stood pat here. They did make a big signing. But I don't know. You come out of the summer, there's a bit of an overwhelming sense that there was that second big move to fill that center forward spot that needed to happen, and it didn't. So now he's going to have to get creative there. It looks like Ferran Torres is going to get a lot of run in that center forward spot. Gabriel Jesus, I know they're moving in the direction of him being a winger, but they'll certainly still sprinkle him in there in that center forward spot. So they'll get by. They'll still score a lot of goals, but still, there is a weird feeling about this Manchester City transfer summer here in which, Lukaku goes to Chelsea, Ronaldo goes to United, and they only have, I guess, only Jack Grealish to show for it.
But, they went out and beat up on Arsenal 5-0, right? I mean...
which, in the midst of this Ronaldo stuff, was a way for them to kind of flex their muscles and show, hey, we're gonna be just fine. Don't you worry about us.
Is this You mentioned Arsenal earlier, and because I think Man City is just going to be just fine. We talked a little bit about Ronaldo and the Kane situation. Is this the worst that Arsenal? I mean, I know from a result standpoint it is historically in decades and decades and decades. But is this the worst that club and that brand has looked in our history that we've followed this team?
Yes. This past weekend, our boss, Zach Kenworthy, said to me, do you feel like Arsenal are going to be in the relegation race? And I said, no, I still think they'll finish mid-table. And we both took a step back from that and said, now it's considered positive if you think Arsenal are going to finish mid-table. So that's where we are with this team, which is pretty stunning to me. But yeah, it's bad. All
right. Well, there's all sorts of stuff going on, and maybe for some of these folks, did you want to hit anything else English-wise?
One last thing on the Ronaldo fee. I do wonder if Juve are kicking themselves about how this all transpired, because, like I said, it looked like it was going to be, for a couple of days there, it was going to be City or nothing. And City were operating out of a position of strength. And so Juventus felt like they had to make the fee low enough for City to bite. And then United quickly jumped in, and they couldn't really hike up the price again, because if they were willing to sell them to City for a certain amount, then they were going to have to sell them to United for that amount too. And Juventus are probably thinking, man, if it had been United all along, they're more desperate to sort of make a big splash like this and move up in weight class in the Premier League. So they're a club. I think Manchester United would have paid 50 million euros for Cristiano Ronaldo, no problem. So Juventus, probably the way this unfolded for them, I don't think they're probably thrilled about it, but off he goes. Yeah.
All right, let's go to Ligue 1. Because I mean, every league now. Messi. Let's thoughts on his debut. Ultimately, when it comes to the battle off the field that obviously applies on the field with the transfer window, was it PSG, do you think, that won this in general with the amount of players that they got?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get to that a little bit later, but to me, they absolutely were. Now, with one caveat.
Ooh, caveat. I love caveats.
If they don't win the Champions League this season, and then Mbappe goes to Real Madrid for free, we might look back at the decision to not sell Kylian Mbappe, and it'll sort of recontextualize the way we look at this summer. But as we sit here today, through the narrow lens of moves that were made in the summer of 2021 that will impact the 21-22 campaign, then I view holding on to Kylian Mbappe as a positive. And then when you throw in the fact that they signed Lionel Messi on a free and acquired all these other players as well, including, by the way, they snuck one more across the line today, this excellent young Portuguese left back, Nuno Mendes from Sporting Lisbon. So with Hakimi and Sergio Ramos and Wijnaldum and Donnarumma, and not losing anybody of consequence, really, they absolutely were the big winners in this transfer window, and I would put United number 2. Sometimes it's best not to overthink these things. When Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo switched teams, the teams that got them were probably the big winner of the transfer window.
That's true.
PSG won. But, I mean, it was fascinating this weekend because the other shoe to drop, in addition to Ronaldo, everybody thought was going to drop, was going to be Mbappe going to Real Madrid. And so you had that swirling to the point where it almost overshadowed Lionel Messi's debut for PSG. I didn't think anything could overshadow that, but and plus the fact that Pochettino left him on the bench, he didn't come on until the second half. He just kind of, stretched his legs a little bit, got a little 30-minute run out where he made a few sideways passes. It kind of felt like much ado about nothing. He came on for Neymar, mind you.
Right.
So we never got to see the three of them together, which I know a lot of people were annoyed at Pochettino about. But by the way, Neymar is woefully out of shape, so he did not have 90 minutes in him. So if he had stayed on the field any longer, I think he would have collapsed of exhaustion.
Listen, Pochettino has bigger fish to fry, okay? As you mentioned, they have to win everything. PSG has to win absolutely everything this year, and I think they will certainly challenge for it. Or it should be considered a failure given the talent that they had. The Mbappe situation, I hope that it doesn't happen. There's still obviously a chance here, but I want to see these players playing together. If you're going to put together this super club with all of these Galacticos in a PSG form, I don't know, how do you say stars in French, Mosse? There's your French word. Do you know?
Étoile.
Étoile?
Yeah.
All right. So the Étoile at PSG, then I want them all there, and I don't want Mbappe to go yet. I mean, I think eventually he will go, but at least give me a year and a season with all guns blazing.
Well, you revived the State of the Union today. We used to do something called Mosse Makes the Case.
Right.
And I did one a while back on Mbappe and how when the time came when he tried to force his way out of PSG, he was going to find that it was going to be very difficult. And I referred to PSG as a golden prison. And that was during that annoying period in which Keith Costigan was listening to this podcast every week and then texting us and trying to find fault with everything we said. And he came at me that week about the Golden Prison thing. And then I pointed out to him that that's actually a nickname that the European media uses often to describe PSG. And I heard it a lot the last couple of days, too.
Well, thank God Keith doesn't listen to the podcast anymore. That we moved on from that.
It is interesting, though. The Athletic had this great headline. They said, what's crazier, offering 160 million euros for a player you can have for free in 12 months or turning down 160 million euros for a player you can lose for free in 12 months? And I've been thinking about that a lot. I kind of think the Real Madrid part of this is crazier because PSG, they've never won the Champions League. They're obsessed with winning the Champions League. Their chances this season are exponentially higher with Mbappe. So you can kind of see why. And, the longer they keep him there, they might be able to change his mind. Maybe he has so much fun playing with Messi and Neymar. So I can understand the PSG side of this more and holding on to him this season and seeing if they can win the Champions League. And even if he walks out for free after that, they can at least say, hey, it was worth it because we finally won the Champions League with him. It's the Real Madrid side of this, which is just hilarious. And it takes me back to the summer of 2013, when Real Madrid were pursuing Gareth Bale, and Tottenham's asking price was this world record fee over 100 million euros. And there was all this debate about, boy, is Bale really worth that much? Are Real Madrid going to be willing to pay that? And there was this columnist in Madrid, Alfredo Relano, who wrote this brilliant column. He said, people don't understand how Florentino Perez's mind works. The asking price is the appealing part of it. If Tottenham were asking for half the amount, he wouldn't be that interested in signing Gareth Bale. He's all about big splashes and flexing Real Madrid's financial muscles. It's why you read about these young Brazilians they've signed, Vinicius Junior, Rodrigo. They paid double what anybody was offering because he wanted those signings to feel bigger than they probably were. And with this situation here, I think for Florentino Perez, the way he thinks, there's something oddly boring about free agent Kylian Mbappe signing, out of contract Kylian Mbappe signing with Real Madrid on a free transfer. He wanted that 200 million euro splash of this mega transfer this summer, and he didn't get it, so he's probably disappointed. And we'll see if they do indeed get him next summer. But I mean,
from a financial perspective, on the surface of it, you look at it and say that's crazy. Why would you do that? But to your point, I think that it is establishing to the people that you directly kind of want to influence and establishing to the world, because these are global brands, that this is how much we value them and this is what the value we are going to attach to them, in the same way that we look at movie stars differently relative to how much money they are making per picture. It happens in all walks of life. We associate value relative to the amount of money that these people are being paid. Is that right? Not necessarily. Is it fair? Not necessarily. But it does influence, and it changes the way that you look at both the individual or whatever entity that individual is being a part of. And I think he understands that the message that it sends, especially and in particular for a team like Real Madrid that has to live up to this history of being this super club, if they want to continue to be that and dominate that, they kind of have to do that. I mean, if a big corporation or something like that puts on a show, puts on a dinner or something like that, you are going to be judged on what that dinner looks like, and you're going to want good wine, and you're going to want it at a really good place. So those things, they do matter. I do think they matter. The
guy that seems nonplussed in all of this is Mbappe.
Yeah.
Because he really can't lose here. I mean, I mentioned earlier that I said golden prison, but his dream has always been to play for Real Madrid, and he wants to get there eventually. But he doesn't seem bothered by waiting another year. He knows it would be a lot of fun to play on this PSG team with Messi and Neymar laying balls for you. And he's off to an incredible start this season. He did score both goals this weekend. PSG beat Hans in Messi's debut. That is how you pronounce it, by the way. Yeah, it's the capital of the Champagne region. It's also where the kings in France used to be coronated. It's also where one of the first ever women's soccer teams was ever formed. Why do I know all this? Because we covered the Women's World Cup 2 years ago, and Rob Stone loves me to drop little city nuggets in the script, and so I did a lot of research on Hans. But
all right.
So 2-0 PSG, Mbappe with both goals, and looks like he's going to be adding to his PSG totals this season.
All right, let's say au revoir to Ligue 1 and head over to our friends over there in Germany, the Bundesliga.
So the interesting thing about the summer is Messi and Ronaldo both switched clubs. The two heir apparents, Mbappe and Haaland, stay put. So they will presumably be switching clubs next summer, and they'll be, dominating the headlines then. And yeah, I mean, Erling Haaland underlined his brilliance again this past weekend, scoring that stoppage time winner against Hoffenheim. And yeah, he's a kid who's been very patient in the way he's managed.
He doesn't seem to be bothered either.
No, he's been very patient the way he's managed his career. So he's not in a rush. The plan was always to stay another season at Dortmund, leave in the summer of 2022 when the very low buyout clause kicks in, where any of the rumored clubs will be willing to pay. So he'll essentially have his choice of where he wants to go. The interesting thing here is Lewandowski, who scored a hat trick for Bayern this past weekend. He reached 300 goals with Bayern. He's still a long way from Gerd Muller, who passed away recently. But he's now making some noises that he might want to change here. Now, he's going to stay with Bayern this season, but I could see next summer, his contract runs out in 2023. I could see next summer Bayern Munich parting with him. He'll be 34, but I think there'll still be a decent market for him. And then that would make Bayern a real player for Erling Haaland. So you could throw them in the mix too with Real Madrid, who I think would love to sign Haaland and Mbappe and be sort of the PSG of next summer. Manchester City, now that he missed out on Kane and Ronaldo, you sort of look at them in terms of the English sides as the logical destination for Haaland. But don't sleep on Bayern, which of course, if he ever goes there, it would lead to more hand-wringing about what a joke the Bundesliga is, that Bayern are able to poach players, which is something we're already hearing in the last couple of days because they just signed this excellent midfielder from Leipzig, Marcel Sabitzer. So Jesse Marsch loses a key player there. But so, yeah, that's something to keep an eye on.
Okay, so why is it, I mean, it's easily fixed if you want to put a salary cap in, right? If not, why is it so crazy or surprising to anybody that they would continually do this? There's somebody in their own backyard that's willing to oftentimes pay them ridiculous amounts of money for the talent that they have, and in return, they know they're not going to finish first. But that's nothing new than anything's happened in the past. So how do you fix it other than make a salary cap? Yeah, or have somebody else come in on the other side and buy some of these clubs and put ridiculous amounts of money in that haven't been put in the past.
Well, generally speaking, the price for a direct competitor is higher than somebody from a different league. So, for example, Manchester City were offering a certain amount for Harry Kane, and Tottenham turned that down. And people said, well, if it was a club from a different league offering that same amount, they might have sold him. But there's something about selling him to another Big Six club in England. And even with Real Madrid and PSG, Real Madrid, after missing out on Mbappe, turned around and signed this young midfielder Camavinga, who I think is a wonderful talent from Rennes. And he's a player that PSG had been interested in, but the asking price was much higher because it was PSG, and Rennes didn't want to sell to a team in their own league. So everywhere else, it seems like we sort of just assume that if it's somebody in your own league, the price is going to be a little bit higher. In Germany, that doesn't seem to be the case. In fact, Bayern oftentimes get guys for, I think, a lower fee than somebody else would have been willing to pay. So that's what hits people the wrong way. I mean, 15 million euros for Marcel Sabitzer, it feels like they're just sort of handing over one of their...
But maybe Sabitzer says, I don't want to go anyplace else. I love my life here, and now I can go here. I can make more money. That the culture's the same. I understand what it is. I don't think that's so crazy. And does it hurt the Bundesliga? Yeah. I mean, when it is just about Bayern, and it often is, but I mean, we look at all those other leagues where it's your haves and your have-nots, and oftentimes a very few that actually are the haves relative to the have-nots. But look, if you want to put a salary cap, I'd love to see what our assessment and what the perception of players, coaches, front office folks, and clubs in general were if there was a true salary cap and everybody had to do things a lot more equally in the way that we see with American sports, and certainly the way that we see with MLS. I know it's not completely equal, but it's a whole lot more level playing field because of the restraints and the restrictions put on. But that also gets rid of the super clubs, and I don't necessarily want to see that go away. All right, what else, Mosse?
Well, switching gears to La Liga. Keep in mind, by the way, Luis Aguilar left Serie A completely out of this rundown, so I will ram them in at the end. It's complete disrespect for Italian soccer. But in Spain, I just mentioned Real Madrid, after missing out on Mbappe, they do turn and sign this other very good young French player, Camavinga. And then right before we started taping, I was furiously checking. They've been linked with this other very good young French player, this center back from Sevilla, Jules Koundé, who Chelsea have also been trying to get all summer. And so I don't know what's happened there, if either of those clubs were able to get that move across the line. But and they signed David Alaba early in the summer. So Real Madrid did a couple of decent things. Barcelona, it's hard to judge their summer and to get away from the Messi thing. I will say, though, Memphis Depay has been phenomenal so far. So in a different world where this Messi thing hadn't happened and we could sort of judge Barcelona's moves that they made on their own without having to be in this context of losing out on Messi, we'd all be patting them on the back for this fantastic acquisition. It's almost a shame that Messi and him didn't get to play together. And then Atletico Madrid made a couple moves I like. This very good Argentinian midfielder, Rodrigo de Paul, and then Mateus Cunha, Brazilian striker, who started the Olympics. So they're locked and loaded there and ready to defend their crown. So yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it in Spain. We did have this, I'll let you get to it.
Well, I mean, our good friend Stu Holden is always wheeling and dealing. I worked with him a number of times this past week, and he kept having to duck out to take some calls and to text people, and it was very secretive, very, very secretive. And now we come to find out that, he and his Mallorca were evidently engaged with none other than Matthew Hoppe. American international Matthew Hoppe, who had a hell of a summer with the U.S. national team in the Gold Cup, and they have they got him. They went out and they got their man. So Matthew Hoppe is now a member of Mallorca. So congratulations to him and to Stu Holden. Good signing or not? What do you think?
I mean, this is 100% this happened?
Yeah, didn't I see this on Twitter? I saw that. Yeah, I think it did, actually. I think we did. Now, you know what? If we say it on the State of the Union, it's true, Mosse, okay? We got big microphones here, and, somebody's sitting in their car or on their run right now and listening to this.
Look at Luis Aguilar off camera, furiously Googling, knowing that his future rides on him being able to get us an answer in the next 30 seconds.
I saw it. There's a picture of him with a shirt. There's all sorts of stuff. Yes. I mean, this is done.
There you go. Yeah, if so, that's a very good signing. I mentioned the Glazers, also no love lost from the Mallorca fans towards Stu Holden. So this is an effort on Stu Holden's part to sort of win back their good graces.
Unless he sucks. I mean, look, I'm not sold on Matthew Hoppe. I thought he had a good summer and everything, but
circling all the way back to the top of the pod, he was another omission that some people were disappointed. I think it had to do with his unsettled club situation, so we know the reason, but nevertheless.
I never really understood that. Unless you're actually getting a medical, what are you unsettled about? I mean, your agent does what they are going to do, and then it's one thing if the team really, really wants you there in preseason and doesn't want you to be going to the national team. I get that, but I'm not calling you into the national team so you can sort your stuff out. Well, that's why you have an agent. That's why if you don't have an agent, okay, fine, then you're dealing with stuff. But I don't think that sorting your situation out from a club standpoint requires you to beg off or not be part of the national team. If Christian Pulisic was sorting out his club situation, you think that Greg Berhalter wouldn't call him in for qualifying?
Nah, of course he would call him.
All right. Well, listen. I hope he does well. He has made something out for himself, and he has brought value to himself so much so that. Finds himself in La Liga. All right, you want to hit
And then
Serie
just
A?
to close out with Italy, I already mentioned last week that I felt it was a little presumptuous that people were just handing the title back to Juventus and assuming Inter were going to take this big step back. And now that Juve lost Ronaldo, they lose to Empoli at home this summer. This past weekend, I'm sorry. Inter have gotten off to a good start. Everybody's looking at this again and thinking, boy, Juve-Inter is actually going to be more of a battle than we thought. And I like some of the transfer work that Inter did here, considering the circumstances. They knew they were going to have to sell a couple of big players. They sell Lukaku to Chelsea for all that money, Hakimi to PSG. But they get Dzeko, they get Joaquin Correa, who scored a couple of goals this weekend against Verona. They added Denzel Dumfries to replace Hakimi, Çalhanoğlu. So they made some good moves, and Zaghi's a good manager. So I actually think that Juve-Inter is going to be a real battle in Serie A this year. Inter are going to defend their crown with pride. So
I watched Venezia play, and they're going to struggle this year. The team's going to struggle, and certainly the Americans that are there, including Gianluca Busio and Tanner Tessman, that's going to be a struggle. It's actually a lot like when I went there many, many years ago. I came and played for a team that had just gotten into Serie A, and we knew we were going to struggle. The only thing that was that was on our mind was just survive. Don't be relegated. And I think that that's absolutely what is going to happen with this Venezia team. So it's going to be taxing.
Tessman and Busio can drown their sorrows while crossing the Ponte Rialto.
Exactly.
Or strolling around the Palazzo Ducale.
If you're going to have a difficult season, have it in Venice. Words to live by. Before we move on, Diego Rossi evidently is a loan at this point with the possibility to own to Fenerbahce. We just saw him play this past week in Major League Soccer.
What a game, El Tráfico.
What a game, El Tráfico. And I know, we could talk about a million different things, but we want to get you going and out of here in a reasonable amount of time. But there's so much talk. So good luck to Diego Rossi over there, and we'll see if that ends up being finally that transfer that we've kind of talked about now for a number of years, but has never really materialized for him. But it certainly takes a good player away from LAFC, which can ill afford to be losing bad players given the poor form that they have had this season. Anything else, Mosse?
Last thought on the transfer
there's
window.
Always one.
Shout out to that Manchester United fan who burned his Ronaldo jersey. There was like a day or two there where it looked like he was going to go to City, and you had he was in the news. You had a Manchester United fan burning his jersey. He's probably now trying to hose it off again and see if he can revive it. But again, it just shines a light on something that I find so infantile. I would have had no issue if Cristiano Ronaldo had gone to Manchester City. This notion that because you played for this club once upon a time ago, you can never play for that club. These guys are professionals. It's a job. They're making professional decisions. The idea that he wouldn't find it appealing to go play for Pep Guardiola in Manchester City and be a part of that machine, to me, I would have had no issue with it. I don't think it would have been some great betrayal, and I think you probably agree with me on that.
Yeah.
But he ended up at United. So I heard people say their faith in football was restored.
Oh,
and,
okay. Good. Is he playing for nothing? Because that would really restore people's faith. If he said, you know what? I believe in this club so much, and this club has meant so much to me that I am willing to give of myself, and I am asking nothing in return. Oh, the only thing I'm asking for is to actually be welcomed back to the club that has nurtured me at a part of my career. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, anything else, Mosse, from over there?
That's it.
All right, we're going to take another quick break here, and when we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go away. All right, we're back, and it's time for Ask Alexi. You know that one where you send us some questions, or you call in and you let us know on the hotline what you want to talk about. What do we have this week, Mosse?
First up, at Fox Soccer asks, which Champions League group is the group of death this season? We had the Champions League group stage draw recently, so I guess.
Okay, all right. Well, this is
a question from our employers.
Exactly. I mean, we're not even answering our own employees. Okay. Okay. Do we have the page here? Let's go over it here. All right. So, the 2021-2022 UEFA Champions League group stage draw is what we are talking about here. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 groups, groups of 4. So what do you want to know first?
Well, I think Luis wants us to whip through each group and say who we think are advancing.
Group A, Man City, PSG, Leipzig, and Bruges.
A nightmare draw for Jesse Marsh.
Did you see the picture of Tyler Adams? They got him on camera as it came down, and I mean, look, what is he going to do? Oh, bring it on and stuff like that? I mean, to your point, this is as difficult as it's going to get. The good part is they can kind of go in as the underdog, and whatever happens, happens.
By the way, they've gotten off to a bad start in the Bundesliga, lost 2 of their first 3, fell to Wolfsburg this past weekend, so not even playing that well anyway, and now have to face City and PSG. So, yeah, I think City and PSG advance.
Yes,
and unfortunately,
I concur, my friend. With all due respect to Jesse Leipzig, Jesse Marsh and his RB Leipzig, and Club Bruges for that matter. All right, what Group B is Atletico Madrid, Liverpool, Porto, and AC Milan.
So, the question was which is the group of death, and I think it's between groups A and B.
Okay.
Group A is probably a bit stronger at the top, but you could make a case that the top to bottom Group B is the strongest because even the 4th team is AC Milan,
right.
while the 4th team in Group A is Club Bruges. So that's going to be an incredible group where every game is a big game. Atletico knocked Liverpool out in the round of 16 a couple years ago. Liverpool and AC Milan have played in a couple of Champions League finals, that famous one in Istanbul in 2005. Liverpool 3-0 down, came back 3-3, won on penalties, and then Milan got revenge a couple years ago, a couple years later in Athens. Pipo Inzaghi with a couple goals. They win 2-1. So then those clubs are going to square off again. That's European royalty colliding there. But I think it's going to be Atletico and Liverpool moving on. I like both those teams this season, and I think they advance out of this group.
Really? Okay. I think I agree with you as to who's advancing, but I will say that this is the group of death. And because the group of death isn't relative to which group has the best teams, it's which group is most evenly matched. And when I look at this, I don't think Liverpool is what they once were. I actually think Atletico Madrid is more than what they once were. So I think that's the group of death.
Suarez has already gone back to Anfield with Barcelona, but still, goes back with Atletico now. That'll be fun as well.
That's fun. All right, Group C, Sporting. Let's see, Dortmund, Ajax, and Besiktas.
Dortmund make out pretty well here. Sporting were probably the weakest. Them and Lille were the weakest Pot 1 teams. And so I expect Dortmund and Ajax to advance from this group.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go with that. Group D: Inter, Milan, Real Madrid, Shakhtar Donetsk, or Sheriff Tiraspol. Did I spell it? Did I say it?
Moldova, I believe. Right?
All right. Evidently, we don't have them advancing.
Yeah, Inter, Real Madrid, and Shakhtar were all in the same group last season as well, with Gladbach being that other team, and it ended up being Real Madrid and Gladbach that advanced. Inter and Shakhtar got knocked out. Shakhtar, by the way, they're only in the group stage because, UEFA got rid of the away goals rule this season, and it was already polarizing when we were discussing it in the abstract, and then we saw it in the playoff round. Shakhtar faced Monaco. They had won 1-0 away the first leg, but they lost after 90 minutes 2-1, but it didn't mean they got knocked out. Instead, it went into extra time. They got a goal, they advanced, and so there was a lot of debate on Twitter. I mean, I don't know if we really got into this. I mean, do you feel like Monaco got the short shrift there?
Because of the away goals situation?
I mean, are you a fan of that away goals rule? Do you think it's a valid tiebreaker, or?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
So you would have kept it. Why change it?
Yeah. I don't.
But it doesn't sound like you have a strong.
I mean, if it's not there, I'm okay with it. But I don't think it was this incredible thorn in the side of the game that needed to be plucked.
Like if two teams play and the first leg is 0-0, the second leg is 3-3. Do you think that team that actually scored the 3 away goals did something a lot more impressive where they should go through? Or are you okay if that tie goes into extra time and a 0-0 is treated the same as a 3-3?
No, because everybody knows ahead of time what it is. So don't let 3 goals in.
All right. Nevertheless, I think Inter and Real Madrid.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Group E: Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Benfica, and Dinamo Kiev.
You might recall the last time Bayern and Barcelona faced off in the Champions League, it was 8-2 Bayern win.
Yep.
En route to winning the title that season. So Bayern are clearly the class of this group. Barcelona are vulnerable, but I don't think they're that vulnerable. They eke out second place over Benfica, and Dinamo Kiev are just kind of roadkill in this group.
I want to say that this is where the Barcelona, but to your point, they're not what they once were, but they're not bad. They're actually very good. So I'm okay with that. I don't think we've disagreed yet. Okay. Group F: Villarreal, Manchester United, Atalanta, and Young Boys.
Villarreal Manchester United is a rematch of the crazy Europa League final that had that long penalty shootout, won by Villarreal. United clearly the class of this group. Young Boys are fourth, so it's really between Villarreal and Atalanta for that other spot, and I'm going to lean Atalanta. They've reached the knockout stage the last couple of years. I think they do it again.
I will go with Villarreal.
There you go.
Group G: Lille, Sevilla, Red Bull Salzburg, and Wolfsburg.
Lille have slipped. They lost Christophe Galtier, the manager that led them to the title last season. I think Sevilla and Wolfsburg advance here. Wolfsburg off to a great start in the Bundesliga, 3 wins out of 3. You've got John Brooks anchoring the back line, Wout Weghorst up there, Mark van Bommel coaching them now. I like that team, and I always like Sevilla. So Sevilla and Wolfsburg I'll go with. You want to get Brendan Aronson into the knockout
No,
stage,
I mean, I'm going to talk about Brendan Aronson actually in the next question here, so I'm not going to. But Sevilla and Wolfsburg, I'm good with that. All right, and the final group, Group H: Chelsea, Juventus, Zenit, and Malmo.
I think clearly Chelsea and Juventus go through. Zenit's a club I'll have my eye on this season. They have a lot of Brazilians: Malcolm, Claudinho, Wendell, Douglas Santos. But I think Chelsea and Juventus advance for sure.
All right, the first round of games is September 14th and 15th. So right after this international break, they will be at it midweek in the UEFA Champions League. So we look forward to that. Other stuff, Mosse, what do we have here? I think we have some audio questions, right? All right. I think Christian from Denver asked us a question. So let's see what Christian from Denver has to say.
Hey, Alexi. Hey, David. This is Christian from Denver. Just wanted to say thank you again for featuring my question on the podcast a few weeks ago. I promise I'll keep this one a lot more short and simple. So my question to you guys this week is, I just got done listening to the most recent episode of the podcast, and the really interesting part that caught my attention was how you guys named off the top 10 leagues in your guys' own opinions. And I was very curious that you guys put the MLS above leagues like the Belgian league, like the Austrian league. So my question to you guys is, do you guys see players like Brendan Harrison, like Sam Vines, like John Luca Busio moving from the MLS to those leagues that you guys feel is inferior to the MLS as a sideways step, as a step down, because you do value the MLS as more competitive and just being a better league all around? Just curious to see what you guys' thoughts are on those, if those players have been better suited to actually stay in the MLS and play here in CONCACAF. Thank you, guys. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Christian, for that question. I guess he wants to know, leaving MLS for a European club outside of the top 5, is that a good move for players? Now, look, when we talked about our list and our top 5s, our top 10s and stuff like that, it's subjective. We get that. You know, I will say this. Just because I believe that a team is higher or lower than you do in your list and stuff like that, just because somebody is what I believe going to a lower team doesn't mean it's not the right move for that player. There are plenty of situations where taking a step back in order to go 2 steps forward is the absolute prudent thing to do. I think that we often fall into the trap of thinking that just because it's in Europe, it must be better than everything else that's around the world, including Major League Soccer or any other leagues out there. I mean, you know, when an actor goes to Hollywood to find work and to become a star, it doesn't mean that he or she isn't a great actor, but, you know, staying in the suburbs or in a farm town someplace else is not necessarily the most direct way of achieving your dreams and aspirations or becoming big and famous. And so it applies to a lot of different things. So when we ranked our leagues there might be some teams that some of these players are going to. And as I've said time and time again, just going to Europe, that's, to be quite honest, the easy part, but going to a place that is going to help you your development, either because you're going to love it and that's where you're going to be and you're going to be a great soccer player and it's going to challenge you and you're going to experience a new culture, or it's one of the platforms or stepping stones to get you to where you ultimately want to be. That's a little different story. Mosse, anything on this?
Do you judge a move by the stature of the club or the domestic league? Because as we've talked about, these European leagues tend to be very top-heavy. So you do have a couple of prestigious clubs at the top, and then the rest of the league maybe not so good. So if an American player signs with Ajax or PSV, we don't think of it in terms of, oh, he's going to the Eredivisie. We think, no, he's going to Ajax, one of the storied clubs. Same thing with, say, Porto and Benfica in Portugal. So it's always, those conversations are always interesting. Now,
Salzburg, RB Salzburg,
exactly.
these types of things. You go there, and it's all relative to the league, to your point. So when you are playing for these teams, you are playing for the quote-unquote super club of that league. And so, as we say time and time again, the advantage of being in a super club is that when you walk on the field, let's be honest, 70% of the time, you know the game is already won for you because of the talent that has been amassed. And so when an Aronson does that, it might very well, and I could certainly argue that it's a step down in terms of the actual soccer because he's not being challenged in the way that he was when he was playing in a league where there was much more parity and he wasn't playing on the very best team. But it doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing to do. And the way that his value can be influenced by that move is absolutely something not to disregard.
Where I draw the line on that is Scotland. Occasionally we see an American player get linked with Celtic. We saw with Darlington Nagbe a few years ago, Mark McKenzie recently. And there's debate about whether leaving MLS to go play in the Scottish Premiership, even if it's for Celtic or Rangers, is a good move or not. I know people like Ian Joy think yes. Somebody like Matt Doyle says no, and I'm on the Matt Doyle side of that. I think there's no reason for a promising young American in MLS to go play in the Scottish Premiership. I just have so little regard for that league that even if it's Celtic, I don't care.
Wow, bringing the hammer. All right, my question to you then is this. Are you more likely to be signed by a Premier League team if you are starring for an MLS team or starring for Rangers or Celtic?
Until recently, I would have said Rangers Celtic, but I don't know that that's the case anymore.
Interesting. I mean, it says a lot about how far MLS has come, but it also says a lot about how far that league and those teams, I guess, in the eyes of the world, or maybe just in the eyes of David Mosse.
You mentioned our list that we put together of the domestic leagues. One little postscript to that conversation: the day after we taped, the Portuguese league nudged ahead of Ligue 1 in terms of the UEFA coefficient rankings they have. So the French league dropped down to 6. So a lot of people on Twitter, including Cristiano Ronaldo fans, were having fun with the fact that Messi now plays in the 6th best league in Europe, at least in terms of the coefficient. I still consider the French league part of the Big Five. I mentioned Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, and the French league. But at least statistically speaking, if you believe in these rankings, that's where we are.
All right. I think we got another audio question from Ryan out of Kansas City. Let's see what Ryan has to say.
Hey, Alexi and Mosse. Ryan Yao here from Kansas City. Question from Mosse. So I've recently subscribed to Paramount Plus, not a sponsor, and I'm excited to be able to watch the top leagues in Argentina and Brazil. I'm wanting to choose a team in each league to support, but I'm really struggling to nail one down. Mosse, question. Could you give me 2 to 3 teams in each league that fit the criteria of somewhat hipster, play the youth, and don't just dominate every season? Really appreciate it. Thanks for featuring the question. Bye, guys.
All right, Ryan. Thanks for calling. And you're looking for Mosse for some help. You're looking for a team to root for, if I understand this correctly, in either Argentina or Brazil. And you want to know, I guess, tell Ryan and all of us, because I'll be interested to hear what you say, Mosse. What teams are like hipster teams, or youth teams, or scrappy teams, or an interesting history off the field when it comes to something like that. So, what would your suggestion be to this young Ryan?
Well, I don't know the Argentinian league as well as the Brazilian league, but one club that I've always been fascinated by their history is Newell's Old Boys, which is based in Rosario. It's the team that Marcelo Bielsa coached to great acclaim in the early 90s. That was his rise to prominence. He coached a team that got to the Libertadores final that had Tata Martino, Eduardo Berizzo, and Pochettino on the team as players. So that's why they're all considered part of the Bielsa tree. It's the club that Lionel Messi supports. He grew up in Rosario. Diego Maradona had a cup of coffee there late in his career. So it's an interesting history. A lot of great Argentinian players came up in Rosario at one of those 2 big clubs, either Newell's Old Boys or Rosario Central. That's a big derby between the 2 of them. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I would throw them out there as an option. Defensa y Justicia is a team that recently won the Copa Sudamericana with Hernan Crespo as their coach. He then left to take over São Paulo, and they seem like a very smart club that does good business and always has good young players, at least the last couple of years. So they might be a team. In Brazil, I've picked out 2. Again, if you don't want to take one of the traditional big boys, 2 teams that I really like the way they operate that I think would be fun teams to support would be Red Bull Bragantino, which I mentioned last week's pod.
Here we go.
Red Bull have extended their tentacles into Brazil. They bought into this team a couple years ago when they were in the 2nd division, and they've done what Red Bull does. They've poured some money into it, but in a smart way, signing young players. They've built the roster up. They won the 2nd division, got promoted to the top flight, and they're in the top 4 right now in the Brasileiro, and they're in the semifinals of the Copa Sudamericana, which is South America's equivalent of the Europa League. So they'd be an interesting team to jump on that bandwagon right now. I mentioned that with the success they're having, the New York Red Bulls have become the Fredo of that Red Bull family. The other team I would suggest is maybe Atlético Paranaense, which is a very, very smartly run club. Actually, our good friend Lothar Matthäus has managed them briefly many years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
Had a bit of a short, chaotic reign there. Where
Gee, what a surprise.
He quit sort of unsuspectingly. So
You don't say.
But nevertheless, they're also in the semifinals of the Copa Sudamericana. So we could have the 2 clubs I just mentioned could actually meet in the final of that tournament this year. And also very smartly run club in the way they do their business. Good youth system. They've recently developed guys like Bruno Guimarães and Renan Lodge. So they would be an interesting club, I think, to jump on that bandwagon. So those would be the 2. And in terms of a good entry point to get into South American soccer, we're in the final stretch here of the 2 main competitions, the Libertadores and the Sudamericana. The semifinals start here next month. So I would watch those on BN. BN does a really nice job with their coverage of them and see if you like it. And it's not as polished as European soccer, but it's fun, it's chaotic, and you might catch a bench-clearing brawl and like 20 minutes of second half stoppage time. And so
sign me up.
Yep.
That sounds awesome. All right, thank you, Mosse. That's wonderful, and thank you to everybody that either wrote in with Ask Alexi questions or called in with Ask Alexi questions. We thank you all for doing that on a continual basis. So that's great. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, it's the end of our show. And at the end of our show, well, you know, I give you my one for the road, so don't go anywhere. All right, we're back, and it's the end of our show. And at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. Before I do that, I want to welcome us back to this studio. I guess welcome us to the studio because we haven't done one before. It looks great. Hope it sounds great and looks great for everybody at home. And we look forward to doing more shows from here. And I want to send my good luck to the U.S. men's national team as they embark on yet another World Cup qualifying campaign. And we will follow it. And hopefully at the end of this campaign, we find ourselves in yet another World Cup in November next year in Qatar. And, you know, I look at this team and I look at this sport, and we say, you know, when we talk about this podcast, and we talk about it looking at it through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. And I look at this podcast as many podcasts, as, you know, an escape. And I get it. This is, you know, we're talking about something that we love, something we have a passion for, but we also understand that when it really comes down to it, it's just a sport, even though it's a sport that we love. But we live in a world, and in a crazy world, and in a difficult world, and in a sad world. And certainly over the last week, when, you know, I think about the things that have happened overseas, I felt like I wanted to take this moment at the end of the pod just to pay tribute. And look, if you don't want to listen to this, you can turn it off now, and you can fast forward to the end if you'd like. But it was obviously a very, very difficult week for our country, and we lost 13 U.S. service members who were killed in that suicide bombing in Afghanistan as they protected and helped at the international airport there. Another 18 were injured, and another more than 160 Afghanis were also killed. So just a horrible day for that country, and a horrible day for our country. And, you know, over the years, I have met so many service members who love the sport, and, you know, oftentimes they just want an opportunity to talk about the game, and it's one of the things at times that they miss when they are serving our country. And I want to make sure that I honor that, and I recognize and I respect that, and all of the work that they have done over the years and that they continue to do to protect us and keep us safe and give us this freedom of having this escape to be able to talk about soccer in podcast form or any other form out there, when, you know, the real challenges and the real problems and ultimately the real sacrifices out there are done by them on a continual basis, not for any attention and or thanks. But I do want to give thanks to all of them that certainly over the last years and the last 20 years that we were in Afghanistan, did service to themselves and to this country. And so what I'd like to do is just read the list of the service members that were killed, and then we're going to finish off the pod. And as I said, you know, in this day and age where we weaponize and politicize and at times vilify so many different things, if you don't want to listen to it, that's fine. But I think that they should be remembered, as anybody who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country should be remembered. So here they are, 13 names. Marine Corps Lance Corporal David L. Espinoza, 20 years old, from Rio Bravo, Texas. Marine Corps Sergeant Nicole L. G., 23 years old, from Sacramento, California. Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Darren T. Hoover, 31 years old, from Salt Lake City, Utah. U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Ryan C. Canoose from 23 years old, from Corrington, Tennessee. Marine Corps Corporal Hunter Lopez, 22, of Indio, California. Marine Corps Lance Corporal Riley J. McCullum, 20 years old, from Jackson, Wyoming. Marine Corps Lance Corporal Dylan R. Merola, 20 years old, from Rancho Cucamonga, California. Marine Corps Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nkoy, 20 years old, from Norco, California. Marine Corps Corporal Egan W. Page, 23 years old, from Omaha, Nebraska. Marine Corps Sergeant Joanie Rosario Pichardo, 25 years old, from Lawrence, Massachusetts. Marine Corps Corporal Humberto A. Sanchez, 22 years old, from Logansport, Indiana. Marine Corps Lance Corporal Jared M. Schmitz, 20 years old, from St. Charles, Missouri. And Navy Hospital Corpsman Max W. Soviak, 22, of Berlin Heights, Ohio. Our thanks to all of them for everything that they gave and the ultimate sacrifice that they made, and our condolences and our thoughts and prayers go out to all of their family and friends that are out there right now. Have a wonderful week, and let's think good things for our U.S. national team as they head off, as I said, into World Cup qualifying. We will be here again next week to wrap up all of the action that happened and look ahead at more action that's coming. We thank you all for the tweets and the Facebook messages and the Instagram messages and all the different ways that you get a hold of us, either in the traditional social media ways or now with our hotline, our podcast hotline out there. Keep them coming. We really appreciate the fact that people are participating in this. And, we were on the road this past week in that I was in a stadium again. And it's amazing to me how many people come up and want to talk about the pod and mention, where's Mosse? Where's Mosse? Where's Mosse? Everywhere I go. And rightfully so, because you are a star, my friend, and you are certainly a huge, huge part of what makes this show even listenable. So thank you very much, Mosse. All right, we'll be back again next week. Keep reviewing and rating and downloading and doing all the different things that you do. And until then, and as always, go USA and size the day.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.